And it looks like we are live. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentle thems. My name is Gregory Crafts, and I am a dungeon master with Mastermind Adventures. And we are here today for the Mastermind Roundtable. I have with me an incredible panel of fellow DMs and some fellow content creators here. And we're going to be discussing romance in your tabletop RPG campaign. I would like to go on ahead and facilitate some introductions here real quick. So let's go on ahead and get everybody up here. Let's start with Mahria.
Hi, I'm Mahria Trepes. I'm one of the GMs at Mastermind, and my group calls me the romance queen because I love it in my games.
You love the romance in the games. We love that. And Kristen just gave me the thumbs up. Looks like everything's firing on all cylinders. So let's keep it going. Let's introduce Kristi next.
Hey folks, I'm Kristi Key. I am also a GM for hire with Mastermind, and I think this is a super fun topic. I'm happy to be here with you folks to chat about it.
Awesome. So glad to have you, Kristi. Thank you for joining us today. And Allie?
Hi, I'm Allie Solentic. I am the Master of Lore at Mastermind Adventures and also a DM. And I'm super excited to talk about this stuff because this is stuff that happens in every single one of my games.
Amazing, amazing. And our special guests here today are Cathy and Tom, who are the creators of Date Night Dungeon, which is currently live on Kickstarter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct.
I'm Cathy. That's Tom, in case you need to know.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. That was a little confusing. So, yeah. And please tell us about Date Night Dungeon.
So we wanted to come up with a game that couples could play together. And we started playing around with different ideas, and we came up with something that it's basically a standard Dungeons and Dragons module, or RPG module, except that we've added a few things for romance roles, like attraction points and turn-ons and pet peeves and first impressions and stuff like that too. So, and we broke it into 4 sections so that you can trade off the DMing. So you get surprises up until the end. So that's the plan.
Now, tell us a little bit about your sort of background with D&D that led you to that moment where you went, you know what, the D&D world needs a game for couples and needs a romance game. Because I think, that's, as we've talked about romance and D&D, this group of people, we've gone, oh my gosh, yes, this is a huge topic. It's one that scares a lot of people. It's one that excites other people. Some people have, so what was your background with the game that made you get interested in that?
Well, I've been playing for a really long time. I'd rather not say how long. But I don't know, there really wasn't anything that was available for just a couple to play. I mean, the closest we'd get, I'd play one-offs with friends where we're just trying to kill time and it'd be 1-on-1, but there was awkward romance with NPCs and everything. We were teenagers at the time, so.
Yeah.
But for couples to get involved, Cathy actually pointed out that there really isn't a game that is romantically inclined for 2 players.
And one where you don't have somebody else DMing, it's
a third wheel, as it were.
Right? Be a little awkward if you're, really want to get into the romance. So yeah, we have a lot of couples that we play with and who play, together. And they talked about, they would run a game for each other. And we're like, well, we should make something where both people can be players. So that's kind of how it came about.
Cathy, have you played D&D or RPGs for a long time as well?
Not as long as Tom.
Did you get into it because of Tom, or did you get into it separately?
I got into it a little bit separately, but when Tom and I got together, I played a little bit in college, and then when Tom and I got together, he was big into it, so I'm like, oh, let's go for it.
All right, so Tom, what's your advice for those of us like myself and like Greg, I think, who want to get our spouses into the game, but have been thus far unsuccessful?
Well, I capitalize on some of their nerdy tendencies. I would say, find a genre that is interesting to them, a TV show that they really like, and go with that. And there's plenty of like Supernatural and Battlestar Galactica, and it helps that Cathy likes all the sci-fi and fantasy stuff as well, and even wrote a tween.
My wife is big into Harry Potter, which helps out a lot. She's read that's the series that she keeps rereading, and she also, her claim to fame that got me to really notice her at first was that she she'd seen Lord of the Rings, each of the movies in the theaters at least 10 times because they would come out while she was living in Minnesota in the dead of winter. So they like her and her best friend, that's what they would go do during the day because it was warm and it was just not hard to do for them. So they would go just watch. They thought that Orlando Bloom was very hot in Elf Ears, is what they told me. But they got to the
everyone did at that time.
Yeah,
I
made a really.
I had a cutout of Legolas for a while. He guarded my recyclables in college, so.
Yeah. Well, the way that just really funny quick story. So my wife and I met at a theater company in Hollywood, and I had seen her headshot on the company board. And I was like, "Oh, do you remember? Oh, she's cute." And apparently she'd seen the same thing about mine and said the same thing about me. And I was like, okay, great. That's something I found out later, but it was like, all right, so this is going to happen at some point, I hope. But the first time that we'd actually been in like the same room together, I made some really out loud geeky reference and she was the only one who got it. Like everybody kind of stopped and stared and she's like, Gandalf, duh. And I was like, I literally didn't even see who it was, but I spun around and said, marry me. And then I realized it was her.
That's similar to how my husband and I met. He made a joke about, we met playing World of Warcraft, so that shows you how nerdy we are. But one of the first times that we kind of went on a group date together, he said something about Warhammer 40K, and I quoted, like, in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there's only war. And he just turned to me and was like, you marry me, please. I love you. And I was like, we've literally just met, dude. Like, no. But it worked in the end,
He wore you down over time.
Exactly, yes. It was all those days in Western Plaguelands.
That's awesome.
My husband wore a 1984 shirt. He wore a shirt with a quote from 1984, and I went, oh, hey, I loved that book. And he was like,
What?
What?
Nerds.
Yes.
But for those of you who don't have spouses or partners who are mega nerds, or at least who aren't willing to be in touch with their inner nerd, there is still hope for exploring romance in the RPG that you are playing, and that's definitely a little bit of what we're going to talk about tonight. And I think it should be. I think in RPGs, often we're seeking for some sort of facsimile of reality of the real world of real life, and to pretend that romance and love and lust and all the other stuff that comes with it isn't a part of life is to be willfully ignoring the obvious. But I think it makes a lot of folks uneasy when they start playing RPGs because it's going through life, but it's not real. So that's what we want to talk about a little bit. Anybody want to dive in with thoughts on that? I mean, one thing I'll say now that I'm talking, I think it's an intimidating thing for a lot of people to explore. It's an intimidating thing in life. It takes a lot of courage. Apparently some of us just ask our spouses to marry us the first time we meet, but for others, there's the long courtship process. There's getting up the nerve to ask somebody. It worked. So lesson learned out there, kids. But there's a courtship. There's getting up the nerve to ask somebody out. There's the progress of relationship. RPGs tend to be, even though some of the campaigns can last for years, they're still condensed over a period of time, so things could potentially accelerate a lot more quickly. But that's still nerve-wracking, and I think it's nerve-wracking amongst friends a lot of time because we know how to relate to our friends as our friends. But when suddenly relating to them, even though we're not ourselves, we're our characters, and this other thing is introduced, I think a lot of people just don't know where to begin on that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and there's also that, whole situation of it feels awkward to flirt with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel awkward to flirt with your friends. So it's fine being comfortable enough within that group of players, whether you're the DM or whether you're a fellow player, having that type of meet cute interaction or eyebrow waggling interaction where you are making that type of move and you're not by yourself doing this in an enclosed in like your own little bubble. You're in front of other people who are watching and listening intently as they're seeing this thing go on, because Dungeons and Dragons and most RPGs are collaborative storytelling experiences, and that can be a part of the story, and that can be very intimidating to kind of jump in that. And actually, this comment came a while ago about how has romance worked in your campaigns. Was one of the questions that popped up a while ago. So I guess I can start answering that one first.
Sure.
I run a campaign that takes place in the Critical Role universe, and one of the characters worships the Moonweaver, and she has romanced so many NPCs, and it's amazing. Is
she a bard?
No, she's a cleric.
Okay.
Ooh, spicy.
All right. Well, I appreciate the fact that you're defying the stereotype. I'm all for that. So
it's so amazing, because this is such a fun character too, because she's here for a good time, not a long time. So she's been very much like that type of character, and like
so it sounds like the girls I dated in college, and it was a perfect arrangement. So
and the guy who plays her has just been like, I want her to be like this really fun character. I'm like, yeah, do it, let's go. I'm totally comfortable. Like I even made a whole speech ahead of time. Hey, what are things you're comfortable with? What are things you're not comfortable with? And people were comfortable with the whole flirt thing, and I'm like, oh, it's on. I love flirting as an NPC. It's great.
Oh, the glasses are off. Here we go. All right.
Exactly.
Cathy and Tom, I'm curious to hear, as you were developing your game, what was your experience with that? What was your experience with sort of breaking down those boundaries of nervousness about getting into it?
Well, we actually sort of Tom DM'd it for a couple of friends of ours on Fantasy Grounds, so that I could take notes early on to try to figure out what I needed to change or what wasn't clear or whatever. And that was really a fun experience, watching our friends go through the module and them, one of them was just two guys, friends of ours,
guys who were married to women, but they
played it as a couple, and
that's so great.
Yeah.
How did that work? I think that's fantastic. So that, to me, that goes, so for people who want to explore romance in RPGs and not just use it as a romance connection with their partner, this module that you've set up, this campaign, actually is good just for anybody wanting to explore romance in RPGs and get more comfortable with it or more experience with it.
It can actually be played just as a straight up RPG, just leave out the romance roles.
Just a module,
so we had offered them the option. We're like, well, you guys just play it for us so we can
make sure the mechanics work and everything.
And they're like, oh no, we want to do the romance.
You chose the right people.
That's really encouraging though, because I find that usually, I don't want to stereotype, but I feel like it's usually men who are the most wary about doing a romance, even if it's just like a simple kind of flirting thing or anything romantic. They're always willing to play kind of like the horny bard archetype, I guess. But I feel like it's a lot less likely to see them actually pursue like an active romance in game.
Well, it's interesting. Arthur made the note in the comments that if you could, here we go. Yeah, there we go. If I can roleplay hating or despising someone, why can't I roleplay romance? And he's totally right. But I think the answer is that for a lot of people, hate, anger, those sorts of things are easier go-tos than love and romance, because one is sort of a defensive thing, an aggressive thing, and the other is very vulnerable, very open, and leaves you exposed. So I think Arthur's totally right that it should have the same, they should come from the same place. It should have the same role. But actually, I think for a lot of people, it's way easier to go to, I'm going to fight that, I'm going to kill that, I put up my shield, it's a defense, it's an aggression, whereas the other is
Yeah, and you even see it in stuff like Critical Role, for example. One of the players, we mentioned this when we were having our little discussion earlier last week, that one of the players was like, I don't want to do it. I'm not interested in romance at all. And his wife, Laura Bailey, said, I'm going to make a character and you're going to fall in love with her. He's like, yeah, sure. And like 2 weeks ago, his character went, can I kiss you?
Oh, so Laura totally seduced Travis's character?
She has. She succeeded.
That is excellent.
Bless you, Laura Bailey.
I will tell you that I think, especially, I feel like that maybe this thought process is changing as time evolves. But I think, especially because D&D was primarily a game for generations played by white men, and it's only like more recently that it's expanded in demographics so significantly as it's drifted more towards the center of pop culture. You didn't see romance plot lines because you didn't want to be flirting with the hot elf bartender that's played by your buddy Steve. There's that, but also, there and that creates like a level of awkwardness. But you would have guys playing the horny bards that would just as soon smash a Shoggoth rather than like be perceived doing anything that could be perceived as gay. And that would. Oh, Paulie Knuckles is here saying that.
That's my guy. He's playing the horny bard.
That's so ridiculous. Points for that. Snaps for that.
Cathy, you looked like did you have a thought on that, on what Greg was saying, or?
My thought was just that I think if you want people to feel free to do that romance stuff, it's all about creating a safe space in your group.
Absolutely.
Feel like they can put that stuff out there and
be vulnerable. Because there's a lot of baggage for, at least me personally, early on romances, and you're interested in somebody in high school and get the stiff arm, and that stuff kind of hurt. Years, for decades, or forever. So
that must have been a big consideration when you were developing your adventure.
Well, it is, just for 2 people. So I'm hoping that these are people who are either already going out on a date or have known each other for ages. So
that was going to be one of our questions. Is this something that people could play on a first date, or is it more like, no, these folks should know each other and know what they're getting into?
If they both know how to play, yeah, sure.
If both of the Tinder profiles say, I'm into D&D, could this be a first date game, or would that be too intense?
One of the first things we say in there is that, you decide on a rating that you're both comfortable with. And, we divided it up into 4. And as each scenario, you can decide, okay, do we want to stay with this rating or do we want to push it a little bit? So yeah, I think it's good for whether you're just getting to know each other or
first date. You might want to make it PG, and then you kick it up as the dates go on.
And at one point, you just tell the DM to stay home and bring a bottle of wine instead.
Yep. You can actually make it into 4 date nights because the way it's split up. So each section can last an hour to 2 hours. So
that's great.
Yeah, you can do it over 4 different date nights, or if you have one long day.
So real quick, from a practical perspective, when is your Kickstarter up?
We have this is just entered our last week. So.
Oh, awesome! And have you guys hit your goal yet, or are you guys still working on it?
Oh yeah, 36 hours, 35 hours
32
in.
hours we hit our goal.
Can we put that link in the chat?
Yeah,
for their Kickstarter, because that'd be awesome. So the folks in the chat can take a look at it.
Absolutely.
But I think the fact that you met your goals so quickly is not just a testament to the work and the quality of the product that you're putting out there, but actually a testament to the fact that there are a lot of folks clearly interested in what we're here to talk about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been overwhelmed by the response. I mean, we've done 6 Kickstarters, I think, and we've never had one anywhere near this kind of reaction. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there is a big audience for romance and RPGs out there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and
about time.
I feel like it's getting to be like people are telling better and better, more and more interesting stories and working much more on character development, because D&D started out as just wargaming, and now people are taking the opportunity to tell richer stories, and I think more people are getting into this because they're getting influenced by Game of Thrones, which is just as much sex as it is violence, and having all that stuff. I think people are seeing much more of what the limits of their imagination can actually do, within these rule sets. And I feel like that maybe this is getting treated with a little bit more maturity, because like back in 3rd edition, you had the Book of Erotic Fantasy, third party, supplement. And, that was like, for when the bard wants to get down, here's the charts, like make your constitution save, and stuff like that. So it's all like, okay.
Endurance.
Make your endurance check. Yeah. But I feel like this stuff is much more about relationships and character development, more so than just the mechanics of things.
Right.
So and my buddy Blake here says he's actually a regular on watching my Monday night game, Brutes in the Shackled City. He says congratulations on hitting your guys' goal. So
absolutely. But I think the point that you were making earlier, Cathy and Tom, and we started to talk about this a little bit, is that if you're someone who wants to start exploring love, romance, sex, any of that in D&D, and it's maybe been challenging for you or it's difficult, knowing the group that you're with or being with the right group is such a huge part of that. Because again, I think for one of the reasons is that fear of judgment, rejection, all that. And you want to be with a group that you don't worry about that with. And then I think, that element also of it feels weird flirting with your buddy. Well, you might feel that way if you don't know where your buddy's at with it, but if you know your buddy's right there with you and all for it, then it feels a lot more, it feels less vulnerable. It feels like something you can try out in the same way you can try out any other thing you might want to try in D&D. In a campaign that I'm playing with, I have a buddy that I'm in most of my campaigns with, and we've got in one campaign we were mortal enemies. In another campaign we were like sister turned out to be mother, and then in one we're octogenarians who have a late life romance going. And I think
I love that.
I want to hear about that later.
I will tell you, it's very adorable. He's dying. It's tragic, but it's cool. We're playing in Savage Worlds. But
why would you say that?
But it's really great because we've known each other since I was in high school. We know each other really well. We know each other's gameplay. We don't feel affronted when we are nasty to each other in the campaign where we're enemies, nor do we feel weird about flirting as our 80-year-old selves. I know his wife is one of those people that's like, D&D, absolutely not. But I know his wife wouldn't give a damn if she knew that we were flirting in one of our many D&D campaigns. So he knows my husband. We don't have any of that weirdness. So it leaves us free and open to play around with it and explore it and try out these different things and different relationships. And I think if folks find the right group, I think that can be really key. What do you guys think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Trust is so important. I mean, trust is important in any RPG, I think, because when you're telling a story, you're going to always have to be a little bit vulnerable. But telling a romantic story is just so beyond that comfort level that you really need to, I think, know someone at least well enough to understand how they're going to react to things. Exactly. And at least have talked about it beforehand before you kind of launch into like a big romance plot, because it can get awkward. And
and I'm sure
it's like a real relationship. The more you talk about it and the more that you like converse and communicate, the better it's going to turn out. Sorry, Mahria, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I just said I'm sure each of us has a horror story of trying to do romance and it just was done wrong and was terrible and like inappropriate.
Well, let's talk about that. So what is romance done wrong in an RPG like D&D? Cathy,
I have a good
where consent or agency is not a thing. The subreddit RPG horror stories is like totally just full of this stuff. I just throwing that out there. But Allie, let me tee it up for you, and then just take it out of the ballpark. Yeah.
So I run this. Well, I haven't run it for a little while, but I run this game that I call Magical Girls for Kristen, who is my older cousin. She's about 10 years older than me. Her mother and my mother. And it's just a bunch of us old and semi-old ladies playing D&D together. This is the first time any of them have played D&D. It's a lot of fun. They're playing like fresh out of high school girls going to this magical academy. And usually every week or every like 2 weeks, we invite on one of their friends to play with us. And one week we invited on this amazing woman, and I'm not going to name her because I don't want to call her out. But she immediately, once we started playing, tried to start flirting with one of the NPCs who was like basically asexual. Like he just didn't notice romance at all. And that was how he was intended to be. He was just a guy. He was the brother of one of their NPC friends in the academy. And she immediately started like hardcore flirting with him. And I was just like, well, this is hilarious because he doesn't know what's happening. And then all of her magic spells started being extremely sexual. Like she kept describing that she was a sorceress, and all of her spells came from like 3 areas, which I'm sure you can guess. And in the meantime, she was still like flirting hardcore with him. And I was like, I'm a little uncomfortable flirting back or even responding to this woman who is like at least 15 to 20 years older than me, being very sexual, very, very quickly. And I was like, I don't think your spells can come from there. I don't, can we maybe pull this back a little bit? And it was not being pulled back. And that was probably the worst case of like sexual content in a game that I've ever, oh no, Kristen's going to get her.
Allie, would you say that that's because of how well or not well you knew her at that point? Would you say that was because of her delivery of that, or would you say it was because the group hadn't developed that level of comfortability yet, or just that it was inappropriate for anybody at any time? Whatever. What would you be your take on that?
So I think it was partly that I did not intend for it to go in that direction, but I didn't really kind of put down my foot about it, and I should have early on. But it was just kind of went from like a funny haha joke to me being like, ooh, like I think I'm blushing really hard right now, and I don't want to talk about this. And I think it was also just that she was a new player. I knew her out of the game, but I didn't spend a lot of time with her. And also like my mother and my aunt were there, and it's kind of like watching like an R-rated movie with your parents in the room. You're like, ooh, like I can. If this was my friend, I'd be like, sure, why not? This is hilarious. But because it was with people that made me like it just was a subject that I wasn't comfortable with talking about, with my mother sitting right next to me and asking to borrow my dice. Like I just didn't want to have this situation. So yeah, so like it's, I mean, and I think that leads into the idea of there being like, you should make sure that there's consent and safety tools kind of used at the table to just be like, hey, you know, when the GM says, please stop, don't say that anymore, you should probably stop. Same thing with other players and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's my horror story.
Yeah.
It wasn't as bad as some other ones, but it was probably the most uncomfortable I felt. There's a video of me during this floating around somewhere on YouTube, so you can see the blank stare in my face when she starts doing it, and I'm just like, please no, please. No.
Oh no,
I had
this down.
Yeah. I had a DM sort of check a player in that way once, where again, someone that one person in the group knew really well was relatively new to the rest of us. And he came in with a character that just wanted to, to just about everything he
smash
saw.
Everything everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
With his +5 Warhammer.
Yeah, exactly. And
life.
In one of these situations, the DM had him roll for this. I think he had him roll a D12 for the size of his +5 Warhammer.
No!
And he crit failed. And it was everything I wanted from that moment.
Oh,
and more.
that's fantastic.
Well, that's a way to shut it down.
And then he proceeded to kind of get frustrated with the DM when a liaison that he was having with the DM kind of narrated it that the other was not super thrilled. And that was one role, and it was combined with another role. It was sort of a performance check, if you will. And when the DM sort of narrated that the other person was unimpressed, he was very, very unhappy with it. And the DM was just like, you rolled the dice. This is D&D. That's how you wanted that to go. That's how it's going to go, man.
I mean, he can claim that it's not the size of the rise, but the motion of the ocean. But, it's...
performance check is a performance check.
Exactly.
And it happens to lots of guys, is all I'm going to say, But speaking
it could be either smooth sailing or rough seas.
True that. I do want to throw it out here that one of my friends here mentions that the safety signal, the safe word for the table, is when his wife clears her throat at the table. That's when everybody knows it's getting a little, a little too much, a little too. So,
Cathy and Tom, as you play tested your module, and you were there watching, presumably you watched couples play. Did it ever get awkward to be in the background of what was going on?
We were playing over Zoom, so
oh, okay.
That's a little bit easier.
Sure. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be hearing this part. Volume down.
It did get salty at times, but
which in a way means you're doing something right? I mean, if people can get that into it, in that case, campaign that's designed for couples and where couples, you've put in those measures that Allie was talking about, like checks and ways to know what your comfortability level is. You've designed that into your campaign.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And it really depends on the players, and the couples we played with, we're giggling all the time because and the other couple, so it really depends on the people. And then I think it would have been different if we weren't there. They probably would not have been so much giggling.
Well,
but we also try to get the players involved, so if the characters hold hands, they get extra romance points. If the players
walking through the dungeon,
if the players do it too, then their characters get extra points. So we try to get the players involved as well.
Yeah. But see, I love that because adorable. It's adorable, but I love it because I think it's designing tools in the D&D way for people who might not be naturally comfortable RPGing. It's giving them the D&D tools to start exploring that, which I think is great.
Yeah.
I think it's the other way around. It's giving people who are comfortable with D&D a kind of safe way to explore the romance.
Yeah, absolutely. That's terrific.
It's so funny that my buddy Blake is watching here because and he mentions that his wife Viv, because this was the gaming group that I had in college, and in this homebrew campaign that was run by our buddy Bashir, his Viv had a fighter character and I had a ranger character who
is this the story you told me before?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it started out as like a straight group or a group of just straight serious dungeon crawling, and we had like this kill rivalry going. It was like Gimli and Legolas, going like 1, 2, that one's mine, and all just going back and forth, and it eventually turned into this this will they won't they falling in love plot line that wound up taking up like half the session at a time sometimes, and everybody would be sitting with watching this flirtation happen with bated breath, and she finally said, I forget, like she finally said yes to something, to like the I think I said I love you, and she's like, after like the longest pause ever, she's like, I love you too. And then the next that was the end of the session, and then the next session we both got killed in a meteor shower. So yeah. It was we got TPK'd, and it was like no. So that arc with our two characters is still one of my favorite favorite plot lines I've ever been a part of in a tabletop RPG, and I'm still incredibly proud of that. I was so salty when we all got killed, mostly because the DM abused use magic device and gave like the rogue bad guy a level 9 scroll of meteor shower, which is just really rude, you know. But
that's awful.
He wanted to pull a rock fall, everybody dies, and succeeded critically. So that was, yeah. But it was like, dude, no.
Does anybody else have like a fun, cute story about something that happened at one of their tables? Because I love that stuff.
I have another one. Okay, so my character in the current Pathfinder game I play in, run by my husband, this is the game where I think I told you about, where all of us are in relationships and we all sit around the table and like go on dates with our boyfriends or girlfriends, and it's just the most amazing thing. So my character's a princess, and she turned 18, and like 14 men showed up to court her and marry her, which I was warned about. In the previous game, I played the queen, and 4 people showed up to court her, and this time 14 of them showed up, and I was not prepared for it. So I got all of these letters that my husband wrote for me, and he wrote them all out. They all had different fonts for their handwriting, and I printed them out and brought them to the table and handed them out to all of my character's friends, and were like, hey, which one of these guys should I date? Because these are all the men who are coming to like date me. But she had kind of gotten involved with this other NPC who was also another noble, but was like a count, and he was very concerned about the difference between them in terms of rank. And but she kind of fell in love with him and really wanted him to come and court her. However, he showed up for her birthday with his betrothed, who had been forced on him, which started a whole line of us having to go to his home country, and we fixed some guy's spine so that he could go and marry the woman that her boyfriend is going to marry. And we orchestrated this whole thing. It took about a year of in-game time to like orchestrate him like actually he ended up getting disowned by his family, but he took his little sister and moved to our country, and now he's a suitor. So everyone's like, well, clearly you're going to marry Jordan. Like, clearly that's the one you're going to marry. And I was like, I'm not going to marry him until he tells me that he loves me, because that's really important to me. I'm not going, I told him I loved him. I've given him all these presents. Like, we've talked about how we want to spend our lives together. But until he actually says I love you, I can't even consider him, because there's another guy who absolutely loves me, and I could definitely love him, but we need to work this out. So a couple sessions ago, she basically was like, hey, do you love me? And he was like, I need a couple days to think about this. And she was like, well, okay, I guess you need to think about the fact that you love me. I guess I'm not going to be visiting you anymore at night. And so she got really depressed, and all her friends were like, Eileen, what's wrong? Like, what's happening here? And I was like, it's nothing, guys. It's nothing. It's nothing. And then in the tavern where we spend all of our time, because we're adventurers, he walks into the tavern and he's like, hey, he's very formal. He's like, Your Grace, can I speak with you, please? And I was like, oh, really? Now you want to talk to me? Like, okay, let's go sit over there. And we go sit down, and he's like, Your Grace, Eileen, and then he paused, and I was like, what are you doing, Tom? This is my husband. What are you doing? And everyone else at the table was like, he's going to say it. He's going to say it. And they're like banging on the table being like, what's going to happen? And then he's like, I love you. And I was like, yay. But my character was like, oh, that's nice. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I already told you I love you back. He's like, yeah, I know you love me back. Yeah, I just want to say that I love. And so like now I just make him say it all the time, and it's hilarious. But yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the story. I have until my next birthday to decide who I'm marrying, but everyone knows it's
for making you wait.
So, yeah, it was choice. I loved it.
How about you, Cathy and Tom? Do you guys have a good story?
We did play one romance.
Oh yeah, early on.
I
don't even know if we were married at the time, but
yeah,
our friend ran a one-off for us where we were a couple of half-orcs that were in this town, and we wanted to settle down together
and have our own little half-orc baby.
Yep, in a cave of our own. And I had the worst comb over ever, and she had a mole or something right in her forehead. And it was mostly role playing. We went around and talked to everybody in town.
Because we couldn't settle in the town because the townsfolk were afraid of us.
And there was a murder.
Because there was some murders happening. So we, with our...
Naturally, they assume it's the green guys. Yeah.
Right. Of course.
So with our very low intelligence, we became a whodunit. We had to find out who was actually guilty of the crimes so that we could have our little cave and start our little family.
Yes.
It was very fun.
Tusk love.
It was a lot of fun.
They love each other so much.
There's one of the other couples in this game that I was talking about is a half orc and a tengu. And they've just recently decided that the half orc has decided she's like this big, she's the NPC, she's this big buff monk, and the tengu is a like 4 foot tall thief, and they're adorable together. They're the best. Once a year he gets a cleric to alter self on him, and he calls it Lip Day, so they can finally kiss. And it's like a big thing. We were like, oh, it's Lip Day. He got a hat of disguise, like a greater disguise. Aww. So now it's Lip Day every day, and it's like the best day ever.
Lip Day every day.
Yeah. So Seg, the half orc, was like, Sachi, we need to. I want to settle down. Like we're there. She works at an orphanage. The orphanage they were both raised in, and she's like, I want to have kids. I want to have a lot of half orc babies. And Sachi's like, that's great. And then he like jumped out the window and like tracked down one of our other friends, and it's like, she wants to have half orc babies. How can we have half orc babies? I'm a tengu. This doesn't make any sense. What does she want to break up with me? Does she want to find another half orc?
Like how do I nest with that? Like how does that work?
Yeah, it was really funny. So yeah, the hats of disguise are involved now apparently, but yeah, that's what's happening. Lip Day every day.
Lip Day every day. Yeah.
No,
better than pecking your eyes out in love,
Yep. Right.
It just gives her a little peck now and then. But
peck.
It's cute.
I love peck.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about romance between players. What's everybody's thoughts on romance between player characters and NPCs?
Oh, I need help with this.
That's pretty much all I've ever done. I haven't really done like a romance between PCs. Because I haven't been in that kind of situation.
Yeah,
the one game my husband and I played together.
The game your husband.
Well, the one game that we played together, we played twins. We were brother and sister.
Oh.
You didn't get all that.
And like we weren't Jamie and Cersei. We were just we were twins. Like that's all we were. And we played in other games together where
family trees doesn't.
There was another game we played in where I played in a game where I was in a romance with my friend who is a player, and my husband wasn't involved at all in that. Like he was a player in the game, but we weren't even close to being anything. Yeah, we've never done a romance together.
As well.
As player to player.
No, well,
I'm working on it.
Twins, but that wasn't really a romance.
That's what I mentioned. The twins weren't really a romance.
No.
Sorry, he's sitting across from me, so he's correcting me every now and again.
Kathy, what were you going to say?
I think often that's a problem because, unless the NPC is actually adventuring with you, how much time would the character get to spend with them?
Exactly. Or if they have like a port of call that they go to after each adventure, that could make sense. I'll put in a little anecdote here. I made my players in my Friday game had to get on a boat and sail to another continent. They took a job to essentially help the Cobalt Soul. And the captain on the ship was this very big, beefy, handsome, flirtatious tiefling who saw the Drow Paladin and went, oh yeah, and like focused all of his flirting on the Paladin because I was like, this will be good. And the Paladin reciprocated after like a month at sea because they were just like,
well, after a month at sea, like half the audience.
I saw this dungeon. And because they spent a couple months at sea, like that interaction ended up being very like organic. And this is and even the NPCs that they're traveling with, they chat with them all the time because they have been traveling with them for this mission. So like trying to include an NPC that's like kind of with them, but like don't necessarily have to go on the whole mission. Like it's like a little, they stay at the base, whatever. Yeah. I found that has been pretty helpful in regards to NPC plus PC interactions just in general. Also, if you put a cute wizard girl in mortal danger, all the PCs are like, well, we need to help her.
Yeah.
Definitely did that.
But there is that
key one.
There was a campaign that I was in where, and I actually missed the session, but one of the characters had a sort of very quick, but not like one night stand kind of thing, but like it was very romantic, but quick because the campaign was moving and we were heroes with places to go and people to see. But it ended up tying back in throughout. The DM did a good job of sort of mentioning it from time to time, and the player himself was good at sort of throwing. I think I would be thinking about her back there, and at the end of the campaign, that was like kind of the wrap up with he went back to find her, and that was his plan. And what I liked about that I thought was interesting was it was a great way to include that heart, include that romantic, to see that side of that character who otherwise we weren't going to see from this little halfling monk. But it also didn't then overwhelm the other things we like about D&D. You know, I think sometimes people fear romance because they don't want it to completely consume the campaign. You know, they like it, they're for it, but they don't want a whole session to be just two of their fellow player characters flirting and having a romance that they may or may not be that interested in. Like your story was great, Allie, where everyone was obviously wrapped and waiting to find out what was going to happen. But that's in part a credit to you and your fellow player and how well you did it, and how you built it. Not everyone is as successful at building those stories and narratives, and it, admittedly, if it's not done as well, can be boring if you're not involved. So I think some people have that like, we're getting into the romance here. It's, you know, that the kid at the beginning of The Princess Bride, they're kissing again. Do we have
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Kissing
So that's a real problem for some people. They just don't want to see. I mean, it's kind of the difference between like a role player and a role player, like a role player, like you would just want to roll the dice and kill things, or like you actually want to get into the character. Right. But yeah,
and in a way that includes the group, in a group inclusion game. You know,
my solution was always I would write letters, and like my husband and I mean, we have the bonus of being in the same house together and being able to talk about this kind of stuff. And in the last game he ran, we basically were like, we're not doing any romance at the table because it would be boring for them to have to sit there and watch you go on a date with someone and have an awkward conversation and get to know someone who's an NPC that isn't even one of them. Right. So we did everything via Google Docs. We just had shared Google Docs where we would just we would tag each other back and forth, and so I would write a letter and he would respond to it. What?
You guys blue booked it?
Oh yes, we have over 300,000 words written for one of my characters.
Wow.
We have, and it's fun. The great thing is that I can go back and read all of them and like read the romance all over again and get like the warm fuzzies, and it's really great.
I did the similar thing because we play it every Tuesday. We've been playing every Tuesday for a while, and we wanted our characters. We shipped it. We were like, well, let's see what the other players. They were for it, but because there were 7 people at the table, we did not want to try monopolize table time because
it's a real thing.
People were like, and some people were like, all right, cool, and like. Which is fair. So we ended up blue booking most of their like interactions with each other when they were on a watch or they went on a date, which was super cute. Like, so I love blue booking for stuff like that. And it can be especially useful, especially if people are uncomfortable at a table doing that in front of people. That's a much more safe space to ease people into that, which I think
absolutely.
Yeah. And I like how it kind of, bubbles over, like just little things. In one of our campaigns that Tom's running, a couple of the characters are having romances with NPCs, and so the PCs were sent to town to buy some stuff, and one of the guys just kind of poked me and he's like, well, help me pick out a a gift from my girlfriend back, and it's like, oh, that's just such a nice little detail. That go into the game that just makes it more real.
Absolutely.
And when you think about it, like a lot of this stuff is going to be private anyway, so you can have a kind of cool situation in character where like you meet up with the character that you're having a romance with and you say like a little joke and you both laugh and everyone's like, wait, what are you talking about?
Wait,
Hold
that
on,
didn't
tell
happen
us
at the
the
table.
story.
What's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah, like I really I love that
character
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that adds a level of intrigue as well, as opposed to having the group at your table feel like, oh, here's the romance that's I'm not interested in is taking over. It gives them that sense of, wait, what's going on? Oh, there's something happening here. And it makes people lean in as opposed to roll their eyes and lean back.
That's kind of like real life too, because I mean, you're not there for people's dates.
Exactly.
Usually.
Usually.
You just hear about them people together later. So
Brian, don't call me out like that. Jeez.
Oh.
People play with our
they're too
talking
busy making
smack.
I can see they're sassing you in the chat.
They're having a good time.
Yeah, our DM was like,
oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no, we lost Mahria.
She got so passionate about. Oh no, here it comes. She's back now. There we go.
Am I still on?
Yep, you're on.
Am I still on? Am I still here? Am I on the internet?
Oh, yes, you're back now.
You're gone. You're back.
My goodness.
You're back now.
Something happened.
Your friend, your party's rebukes were so strong they kicked you off the stream.
Oh my goodness! I did not come here to be attacked.
we got a question from Arthur. I want to read it. Oh yeah, thank you, Greg, for throwing it up there.
And Kristen posted one afterwards that we'll share as well. The chat is very active, which I really appreciate because it's a lot of fun to have all this stuff happening here. So thank you guys.
What would you say to someone who wants to do more romance in games but feels uncomfortable doing it or bringing it up? Great question, Arthur. Thank you.
I'd say, just like real life, start slow. Success breeds success, right? If you throw a little bit out there, if it's just, a hint or something and it's well received, that makes you more confident next time. So work your way in.
Yeah. And as I introduce it with NPCs like the one she's talking about, it just happens to be, the farm girl comes up and gives you your breakfast and kind of blushes a bit and fumbles her words and then goes on her way. And then, but don't focus on it and just sort of let it organically go. And hopefully people are comfortable. If they're not, they'll ignore it.
Handle it in a mature fashion. And don't just turn it into the horny bard escapades, don't just turn it into a Bard's Tale 5, So we got one from Kristen here. Kristen's got a great question. Mahria and Allie, any advice for GMs who want to facilitate romance at the table with the blue book? What software do you use to do that?
I usually just use Google Docs and share the document, and then you can kind of live update it as it happens.
That's much better than what I did. I usually just use Facebook Messenger.
That's also
valid.
Messenger. I've used Discord every now and again.
Discord would work too.
Yeah, and we use the chat and Google Hangouts with my groups, and I think just whatever you and your people are most likely to respond to throughout the course of the day. I think what's good about Facebook Messenger or Hangouts or whatever those types of things are is you're going through your day, you get the pop-up, you might see it quick, you can respond to it, put it back in your pocket, and it keeps the action really moving, which is nice. It keeps the game going between sessions, and it's there. It really lets you build. But I think anything
it's exciting.
Your team is
so exciting.
Yeah, it's like you're texting with your crush. It's great.
Yeah.
On a long rest, I'd be like, "We're gonna blue book this." It was like, "Yeah, we're gonna blue book now." Yes.
Texting with your crush, but in a very legitimately non-cheating character.
Exactly.
I say I have a theater background. My husband is from a theater background. If I watch him do a movie where he's kissing someone else, has a love scene with somebody else, I don't get jealous because that's the character that he's playing. It's theater. It's not my husband. It's not a threat to me and to our relationship.
Yeah, I also in very similar situation. My husband's not an actor at all, but I've done LARP, I've done shows, and he's like, yeah, whatever.
Right. Exactly. I think it is important to bring up that in that sense, even though D&D isn't theater, it is still improv and role playing, and it is not you. It is a character you're playing. And I think for folks who might be uncomfortable with that, in the same way that I assume people, I don't know, because I've always dated actors, but I assume people who don't date actors maybe at some point have to have the conversation like, hey, you're cool with this, right? Like, I'm doing that love scene. You get that this is not me. You're, you know, and the spouse has to be, partner has to be understanding and get that, or else you're going to have a problem. But it's
not to take that and change the subject, but as a producer who has produced shows out here, and I've had to cast people who have had to do love scenes or kissing scenes and stuff like that, and then to hear during the runs of the shows about the problems that this is causing at home because they don't have a partner that understands that is really, really tough. So, you know, for stuff like this, especially like, and you know, that's like doing professional theater with professional actors and film with professional actors and stuff like that. And that's a professional situation. For something that's like this, where this is all for fun, then the boundaries and you really do have to get that buy-in from your partner so they understand what's going on. I mean, and I just kind of want to take this and tangentially kind of shoot it over to my situation real quick. The Monday night game that I've got, Brutes in the Shackled City, which streams on this channel live, 7 p.m. Pacific. So quick plug there for anybody who wants to join us. I have a situation where one of my players, who is a very, very good friend of mine, both mine and my wife's, my friend Victoria, we've known each other for over 10 years. We've produced theater together. I've worked in her theaters and stuff for years and years. And you know, we're theater people. We all like to flirt and have fun. And she's gotten now to this point where her character is flirting with one of my NPCs because she went off with them at one point. She couldn't make part of a session. She couldn't make a session. So I wrote it off that she'd gone off with a couple of the NPCs who I needed to get out of the party because they recruited a lot of help to go down and raid this dungeon. And I'm like, I can't track a whole nother party's worth of characters. So I said that the two of them went off. And the character that she'd gone off with, I had established very subtly was gay and in a relationship with the other adventurer that he had come down to the dungeon with. But at one point, the bard in the party goes, I bet they're going to go make out. And then suddenly that joke just kind of took on a life of its own, where now the boyfriend is kind of jealous, going like, where did they go? What are they doing? You know, and like, why? Is she a trustworthy woman? Like, what's going on here? And she's like, yeah, dude, I'm all into Smash. So like, come on, like, are we doing this or what? You gonna climb this tree? You know? and
my goodness.
Yeah, I know. And,
wow.
and I'm like, and I'm just trying to play it. I'm trying to play him like, what the hell did I get it's Felian and Fario, and Fario is the one who keeps going off with the dwarven fighter, and he's just like, I don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm really just trying to. Spoilers, I'm really trying to spy on this party right now and find out what's up and what they know about the greater campaign arc going on here. And Felian, the boyfriend, is like, oh yes, I'm sure you're interrogating her very hard right now. You know? Yeah. So it's fascinating and it's fun, but it is like, oh, it's complicated because I haven't quite decided like how into it he is at this point, and if you know, like just how many directions he may or may not swing in, and if this is something that might happen or not. I'm kind of enjoying just drawing out the tension, but do you guys have any advice on where I could take this and how I can handle it? I mean, the nice thing is that with the player in question, we're both totally cool with whatever, and it's mature adults and we're all friends here, so it's not like, you know, they will be panned to the fireplace because this is on the company Twitch. You know,
exactly.
but you know, do you guys have any suggestions or advice for this? Because I do want to like keep the tension going for as long as possible. I really want to get it. I think I'm deciding that Fario is bisexual, yes, and I think Felian is gay and a little jealous. They also have a permanent telepathy spell linking them that the party doesn't know about, but that's how whenever the party's been separated, and they always make sure that one goes with each group, that they always know where the other is and what's going on. So my players haven't picked up on that yet. I'm like, come on, guys. So, you know, but like, what do you guys think I should do with this, and how long can I Oscar Wilde this and keep the tension lasting as long as possible?
So I think you should have them have a mock fight and like get angry at each other, like fake get angry at each other for the benefit of the party, and then like walk off in different directions, and then when whichever one goes off with the dwarf, whenever he's over there, he can like work up the sympathy of like, I'm in a fight, and like I told him that I'm gonna do whatever I want and be with whoever I need to be with and get the sympathy, and then you can really hit home when he betrays the party and spies on them. Because spies are where it's at. Yes.
Alternatively, absolutely. Like you could also have like a fight where he almost dies. That's what ended up happening with this tiefling captain. There was a huge fight, and you know, it almost went bad. Like a couple of the crew did go overboard during this fight with Sahagin, and the next night that was enough encouragement of I should just bite the bullet that my paladin took to like go and knock on this guy's door to be like, hi, can I come in?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, like,
the threat of death always
like,
pushes
people
danger
where that person's like, oh, I am encouraged to go and make the move could also be helpful.
You know, yeah. For story purposes, you know, you ever watch like a series on TV, once they actually
consummate,
then the sexual tension is gone, and it's the sexual tension that's so much fun.
I know.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you keep that?
It's the will they, won't they? You know, I mean that's what kept shows like Dynasty and Cheers and all these other classics going for so long, keeping people hooked. So
one of my stage combat teachers used to say that a tense scene with a hand on the hilt of a weapon is a lot more interesting than drawn weapons, because drawn weapons are already out there and you know what you're doing. But that moment of like, what's going to happen? Are they going to? What have they gotten there? What's going to happen when they finally pull them? Way more interesting.
It's also
the dramatic tension.
You start yelling.
Yeah. No, it's true. The minute that you start yelling, you throw all the power away in the scene, and you know, and it diminishes. So just keeping, I guess the biggest thing is keeping the tension going. I like that, and the thing is, I've already been kind of subtly seeding the ground for the jealous fight, and if this could turn into just like a play, that they're like, oh yeah, no, we're gonna we're gonna totally just manipulate them here so we can get more information and get in deep.
Yeah. I have a similar situation in a game that I'm running right now, and it's a lot less. I don't even know what it's. So this is a mastermind game that I run for a bunch of teens. So they're like ages 14 to 16. So there's no like weird stuff happening in that game whatsoever. The most like romantic thing that happened is that one player retired to a farm with an NPC that he had rescued from slavery, and it was the cutest thing ever. Just like they shipped all the players shipped them together, and then they like went off together and have a like sweet little pastoral life together. It's great. But I put one of the PCs decided to go off with this group of NPCs who are like supposed to be their rivals, and as I was thinking about like how one of them is like he's like a commander in the army for this like evil empire, and he was the one who asked her to join them when she was like, oh, you know, I don't really like my group, they're kind of all jerks, and he's like, well, I guess you could join us, like come play with us and betray your team, and we're gonna go off and kill a dragon, it's gonna be great. And so she went off with them, and the whole time she's like, something's gonna happen between these two, something's gonna happen here, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. And I'm like, well, I kind of have an idea what's going to happen. I think you're probably going to fall in love with him. And she's like, yeah, I think I'm going to fall in love with him. This is really bad. This is very, very bad. He's a bad guy. I was like, yeah, he's a bad guy. Are you sure you want to do this? She's like, yes. Yes, I want to do this.
Bad.
I want to do this. Yeah. So, and I think that kind of lends it to like communication, you know, like, a lot of times that I'm running a romance as a DM, or when I'm participating in one as a player, like I always say to the GM, like, hey, I kind of want these two characters to end up together, but I don't want it to be easy. So how can we facilitate that? What kind of story can we write together? And like that's kind of how I take a lot of the romances that I deal with, especially with people that I don't know as well, because you can just as easily say, hey, I think our characters would be really cute together. Like, can we have a little romance there and see where it goes? Or like, this is the end point that I think it should hit. You know, I want them to get married and have babies and retire to a farm. Or like I want them to have a rival romance where they hate each other but they love each other, and that's like the tension of them, you know, hanging off a cliff together and one of them has to let go. So I think like communication is so important for that kind of stuff, because like a real relationship, you need to know where it's going and you need to have that kind of, you know, communication there, that trust. Again, going back to that idea of trust.
Arthur with an excellent question here. What do y'all think about romances with PCs and villains?
I think like anything that creates dramatic tension, it's a great opportunity for interesting storytelling.
Right.
Because a romance with a villain is that much more complicated. And I think, again, you know, it depends where you are in the story. I think it depends on the group, how it's going to affect the dynamic of the group, what that villain is. You know, are you going to form a deep relationship with the Yeti that's just attacked your group? That might be more challenging, but you know, but
I mean, you know,
it's like
keep warm at night.
Dang. Oh,
it is. Yeah.
That makes
I kind
me
of love that
that
heartbreak.
gives me so many feels.
Yeah. Oh, so many feels.
Yeah.
Like can you just imagine like that final fight where the big bad evil guy, who is the former lover of one of the players, goes, "Come, please join me. I'm nothing without you." And then the player having to make that choice.
Yes.
Do you go with the person that you're in love with, or do you stand your ground and be like, "No, what you're doing is wrong"? Like, oh God, that would be amazing.
Yep.
Very Luke, come with me
GM.
together, we can rule the galaxy.
Yeah. I had a GM try to force me into a relationship with a villain once. It was a game of Scion, and funnily enough, my character. So I was playing a character who was like kind of all sweetness and goodness. She was the daughter of Hades, but she was supposed to be like a Persephone kind of character. She was like a spring goddess, and she was a social worker. And so she was very caring towards people, and like the whole idea was that like she was the charisma bomb, like she would go in and make sure people didn't fight. She was a pacifist. And the GM kept trying to force me into a relationship with this NPC that she was like, "You guys are going to be great together." And I was like, my character doesn't really like him that much. He's kind of a jerk. And she's like, I love PC villain romances. I think the tension there is so great. But in this case, I was like, this character wouldn't get into that kind of relationship because that's just not the kind of person she is. She just doesn't, she wants someone who's going to be good. And she actually was already in a sort of romance with another character. So I was like, this just isn't working. Like, no, this isn't really working for the character. But she just kept trying to push it and be like, no, like you're having a dream about getting married and all of his family is there. And I'm like, I don't want to marry him.
No, this is RPG horror story subreddit right
yeah,
here.
And the thing is that we were all friends. Like I trusted her as a GM.
You know, like, oh, come on.
Well,
and I trusted her, but it was
for any D&D, any RPG is not everything is right, and trying to force something that isn't right, whether it's romance or any character thing or any improv, trying to force something where it doesn't fit is never going to be good for the story.
No.
Yeah.
It either fits and works, and we're, as players, we're working to build characters, and hopefully DMs are working to build NPCs that are real characters and real people with real stories. And like a real life romance, sometimes one side wants it to work and the other side just doesn't, and that's tragic.
I did love
Yeah, that's on the unrecorded.
And
Kristen's got a great question I want to throw in here. Cathy and Tom, how do you guys come up with the scenarios for your campaigns?
Well, for the Kickstarter, would you?
I don't. Well, I'm a writer, so coming up with stories is, kind of what I do. And Tom is coming up with stories all the time. I guess for the campaign, it's a little more tricky because you have to get people to do what they need to do for the module. I mean, you have to give them enough motivation to do what you need them to do without making them feel like they're being railroaded. So
hopefully we did that successfully.
Hopefully, yeah. I think people will tell us whether we did that successfully.
I'm really excited to check this out. Yeah.
yeah.
This I will this is our first module, so I hope you all enjoy it. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That first module is always the scariest.
Yep.
I find I write modules too, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
I actually had a question for you guys. So is your game like a 2-player only game, like so just the 2 people?
Mm-hmm.
So I've always found, so I've written a couple of like 2-player, like 1 GM 1 player modules, and I've done a couple like things like that, just testing out new systems and that kind of stuff. But I've always found that like 2-player games are extremely like intense. What have you guys done to kind of have you leaned into that, like really kind of making people like feel that intensity, or have you kind of tried to put in stuff to lessen the tension at times?
We have added a few things that could be funny, or to add a little bit of humor here and there, and then but yeah, I think you want it intense if it's going to be for romance, so we didn't try to hide from the romance.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's good. Yeah, it's
I wanted to make it kind of, I don't know if you've done any of these murder mystery dinners where you have like thing and then you turn the page and then you find out more information.
It's a little like that too.
So it's a little like that, so you can trade off DM duties if you want. So
that's great. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And not put too much pressure on one person to have to lead the whole thing.
Yeah, and then when you get to the end, hopefully, there's 4 sections, so hopefully whoever DMs the last section is going to find out a little bit ahead before the other person, kind of the ending. But
I think it's great too, because it allows couples to be at their comfortability level with the romance as a couple and not have to factor in a third party. So, whereas a couple might be very, very, very comfortable with one another and really go there, but when you add that other person in, they'd rein themselves way, way back. But when it's just the 2 of them, they really get to go where they're ready to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
I hope people enjoy it.
Yeah.
Everybody who play tested it so far has said how much fun they had. So
well, obviously, you have a lot of people very excited to dive in, including I think 4 of us on screen with you. And
yeah. I'm gonna, after this live stream, I'm gonna go look it up.
So
coming to Mastermind Adventures date night.
Did we get the link in the chat? I haven't figured out.
Unfortunately,
it's
filtered because of it's filtered because they don't want people coming into the chat and spamming things that.
Well, anyone who's watching, if you're interested, as we all are, you can go to either our Facebook page on Mastermind Adventures or to Cathy and Tom's Facebook page. All the links are on both of those pages. Or what's a good website?
Or you can go to Kickstarter and just look up Rescue of the Blackthorn Clan is the name of it.
Perfect.
Yeah, and Kristen says that we should have you guys back to talk about the reaction after the release and find out.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely want to do that. So, Kickstarter.com. You can Google. You could search for Date Night Dungeons or Rescue of the Blackthorn Clan on Kickstarter, and it'll come right up. I searched for Date Night Dungeon, and bam, it was first results. So, yeah, please check it out. You could still back the project. There's 7 days left to go on it, and this looks like it's a pretty awesome supplement. So definitely worth checking out. We're at about that time of the chat where we want to do a round of takeaways from the conversation. So let's go on ahead and lead it off with Cathy. Tom, what would you say are some of your takeaways that you're going to be thinking on after this conversation's done and wrapped?
Lots of things to think about for our next date night dungeon, in terms of, how we get people comfortable with it and just finding ways to get the romance
together.
Bring people together and
gave me a lot of food for thought for just the games that I run in general. And,
I like the idea of having the offline stuff going.
The Blue Book stuff.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Might give that a go ourselves.
Yeah. Good idea.
Kristi, what would you say is your takeaway from today's conversation?
Yeah, I would just hope that folks would feel maybe a little bit more empowered to give love and romance in RPGs a try, and hopefully folks have come away with some tools. I think the biggest one is really, for me, is still just knowing your group, knowing who you're playing with, and like Cathy said, moving slowly will help progress into. You don't have to dive right into it. It doesn't have to be you come in guns blazing. That's typically not how it goes in life anyway. So just sort of wade into it, and hopefully with that, your comfortability level will increase. And it can be fun, it can be funny, and it can add a really interesting dimension to your campaign.
Absolutely. Allie, what do you think?
I think that we need to do this more often so I can hear more stories about adorable interactions between people in their games.
I am here for it.
Thank you.
I love game stories. That's like one of the things that I love the most. And as you can tell, I love telling game stories. But I think my primary takeaway is that I'm always going to encourage more romance in stories, because I think romance is one of the great things about the human race that really, I think, makes us human and makes us real people. And I think if you want to make your games feel more deep and more interesting, romance is a great way to go with it. And I think that I personally am going to take a couple more, I guess, chances with it, in terms of trying out different things, trying out new types of romance and new angles to it. Definitely going to try out a villain romance at least once.
Yeah.
And
that sounds amazing.
I mean, I think I want more people to tell stories about romance in their games, because I think it's something that no one talks about, and I think that they should, because
and it's, you know, one of the it's like one of the great motivating factors. Love is a fantastic motivation, and it's what most epic stories are chock full of. So why not at our tabletops?
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. Mahria, what you got?
Definitely the whole like communication bit, and making sure, like, not only knowing your players but communicating with them. It has to be constant. It's a never-ending conversation in regards to players' comfortability, etc. And also just providing those safe spaces for people who want to ease into it. I definitely like the idea of a Google Doc that I could make for players if they wanted to explore that on their own, or encouraging my players if they wanted to do an in-character romance, like, go do it up. Get Blue Book it, have at it, have fun, kids. Kids have fun.
I love the Blue Book concept, and that's going to be my big takeaway from this is being able to use that to help keep plot lines flourishing. I think that I'm going to use that a lot too, because I've also got players that sometimes can't always make every session. So having that, so I'm not on the stream going, so what did you guys do last time? You know, like, and like having to improv a whole bunch of stuff, having that back channel to be like, okay, this is what happened. This is how it played out. Oh, did we just lose? Oh no.
Yeah, looks like we lost Cathy and Tom.
Oh no, I did not kick them out. I promise that was not me. Oh, but well, I'm hoping they'll come back. But if they don't, Cathy, Tom, thank you guys so much. It was outstanding having y'all. I feel so terrible now. Oh no, here they come. Okay.
Yay!
You're backstage. You're in the show.
Oh,
you're back.
they're coming back. We're making it happen. Here we go. There we go.
Our ones and zeros got lost. I don't know what happened.
It's all good. You know, it's the internet, and sometimes it happens. So, but yeah, I'm excited that from this takeaway, I got some really good ideas on what to do with my campaign and how to mess with my players. And I think setting up that dramatic, that big dramatic spat to just ingrain a spy into the party. I really hope my players aren't watching this right now, because they watch my stuff. But you know, if I hear later like, oh, they just shoot them dead, I'm like, okay, I know what's up now.
Spoilers.
Well,
yeah,
Cathy
spoilers.
and Tom, we're so grateful that you took the time to be with us tonight. We're all very excited. Anytime you are making new work and you need play testers, you let us know, because you've got fans built in right here. And I think we all got it. We got to get it. Go off, play Date Night Dungeon, and then we'll have you back once we've all had a chance to play. That'll be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us on the show.
Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure, and congrats on the response on Kickstarter. And we hope that we hope it only gets even more successful, because this is awesome.
And before we take off tonight, Greg, were you going to give the pitch for our New Year's event?
I was actually just about to mention that. I'm gonna throw myself up into the middle here real quick. So, yes, look at me, look at my face.
Look at that man.
Look me in the eye as I speak to you. Yes, so folks, we hope you enjoyed tonight's Mastermind Roundtable. We're going to be back with another one, I believe, in early January, hosted by Arthur, one of our DMs, and they're going to be talking about. And Mahria, are you on that one too, or who's on that one?
I am.
Okay, fantastic.
It's Arthur, a couple of Amandas. Yep, a couple of Amandas.
Tell us all about that one.
Oh, well, it is about, hold on. I actually have like a great Google Doc that like had the title and everything on it. I just need to bring it up. But it is about including queerness in tabletop RPGs.
That's awesome.
So like how to encourage, players to, not be afraid to play a queer character, or even explore queerness or gender identity within a tabletop RPG as DMs to, how does one do that essentially? Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, here we go. Kristen's dropping the knowledge up in here. Yep.
Amanda, Sarah, Arthur from Mastermind, as well as Emery and another Amanda, so double Amandas for this one. But we're going to be discussing, how to, as a dungeon master, it's important to normalize those up, because honestly, we're in the 21st century. It's the end of 2020, but choosing not to include that is, you should do that.
Representation is important, which is
exactly
what we just talked about in the last in the last big Mastermind Roundtable, when we talked about no more evil races in D&D. Representation is critical these days, so it's important to make everybody there's a place, when you have your own fantasy world, there's a place for everybody. Weird not to include it. Yes, agreed. I agree. Kristen says it's weird not to include it, and I agree wholeheartedly. So yes, we have that coming up. What is the date on that? Is that in 2 weeks, or is
January
that after?
6th?
It's January 6th. So that's about 3 weeks from now. I think
7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
7 p.m. Eastern Standard. So really, really excited. I'll be lurking in the comments on that one just to chill and hang out and learn some stuff. And I'm really excited for that. And yes, that is indeed 3 weeks from now. Normally we run these every 2 weeks, but with Christmas and New Year's, we're giving it a little bit of space. So with that, I also want to plug shamelessly, first off, Roots in the Shackled City, Monday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Please come and join us as I run my party ragged here. These are all friends of mine from high school through today. A lot of them are professional actors out here working in Hollywood with me, and we're having a blast. And then most importantly, though, what I want to shout out right now is New Year's Eve. We are running a special event called the Final Countdown. This is an epic module, 24 players at 4 separate tables. And it's the end of the world as we know it, and nobody's fine about it, because there's a gigantic asteroid coming for Toriel, and you have been chosen to jump on a spelljammer and go and intercept it, and then things get really weird. This is a one-shot epic adventure, multi-table epic adventure that is going to be benefiting Extra Life. We will be fundraising for Extra Life that night, and it's a donation to get in and play. We still are looking for players right now, so if you're interested in playing, it will be live streamed, and we will be raising funds for the hospital during the live stream.
And it's a great cause. So if you're looking to have more RPG in your life and you want something awesome to do on New Year's that doesn't involve going to a big crowded party, because that's not what any of us are doing this year, it is a great thing to do for a great cause, a way to have an awesome time and do good for the world all at the same time.
Absolutely. This will be benefiting Extra Life, and specifically Hasbro Providence Children's Hospital. So we're really, really excited to be teaming up with them and helping raise funds for such a worthwhile, worthy cause. I personally have a cousin whose life was saved by the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals. So this is a cause that is very personal and near and dear to me. I will always support these guys, and I'm really, really excited that we're benefiting them. So, please sign up to play. Please watch the stream and donate. Please join us New Year's Eve. And the players will have until exactly the stroke of midnight to save the world. So tune in and see what happens. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us on stream today. Or if you're watching this later, please leave a comment jump in the comments and let us know what you think. Tell us about the romances that you've had in your games or how you incorporate romance into your games. And Cathy, Tom, thank you guys once again so much for joining us tonight. We're so honored to have you guys here and be able to talk about your fantastic project here, Rescue of the Blackthorn Clan, Date Night Dungeons, now live on Kickstarter. Like I said before, you could still back it for one more week. Just search for Date Night Dungeons on Kickstarter and check it out. This is a pretty awesome thing, and we're very, very honored to be able to talk about it tonight and have it fit in so well with everything. So with that, thanks again to all of our panelists too. And keep rolling 20s, y'all. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Take
care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.